So I'd like to welcome Sue, who is a long-standing friend and associate of Coastwise. Sue is an internationally renowned researcher and author. For over 20 years, she has spent thousands of hours observing seals in the wild, from land and at sea in Cornwall. To Sue, there is no such thing as an average seal. Each one looks different, has an individual personality, range of habit and migration route around the Celtic Sea. Sue's love for seals shines through as she talks about seals in her own unique and animated way. Sue founded the Seal Research Trust in 2000, a multi-award-winning evidence-based conservation charity passionately protecting Cornwall's precious marine species and their environment for future generations to enjoy. Sue's philosophy is all about sharing our seals successfully. So over to you, Sue.
So I'm going to talk to you about our iconic seals. You know a lot about them already, but hopefully there'll be something slightly new. Our funding, ongoing funding from the Heritage Lottery does suggest and continues to reinforce the fact that they are a heritage species. They've been in the Isles of Scilly since prehistory. You can find them in middens in several of the islands. So it's great to be looking after something that's a really important species on our patch, really. So this talk is all about seals and people. Obviously, everybody thinks I do seals, but actually the most important thing I do is people, because without people we can't help seals, we can't help the sea. We need to win hearts and minds for sure. Obviously I talked to Martin right at the very start about sending records in. If you want to send a record, it's sightings@cornwallsealgroup.co.uk. If you'd like to volunteer, we have lots of digital volunteers. They stay at home and do it on their computer. It's seals@cornwallsealgroup.co.uk, and we do boat surveys and censuses. I'm sure we could add a few sites, so if you want to take part in that, it's Sarah at. Yeah, exciting times for us, and we're hugely grateful to all the people who fund us. I'm quite proud of the fact that we do have public, private and voluntary support, which is really lovely. So I always like to thank everyone. And as Marjorie said at the start, it's all about sharing our seas for us. And if you've never heard the word ecozoic, it's a new one, fairly new one to me, but it's revolutionized my philosophy, really. So ecozoic is a time when we no longer think we're the most important species on the planet, and that we no longer think we need to look after all the other species. In the ecozoic, we appreciate we're just one species that relies on the network of other species for our survival. And I love that concept. I think it's a really healthy attitude and philosophy. So that's become our driving philosophy, really, going forwards. And as Marjorie also said, every seal counts for us. And I've got three in this photo. There's Fairy Girl on the left, Shadow Puppet in the middle, and Tulip on the right. Shadow Puppet's got the most beautiful belly of all seals. And a question that was asked at the start, how did Martin know that it was a female? Females have these light spotty patterns. So the ones on the top right are males because they're much darker and plainer. So if I know the name of the seal, I've put it down the right hand side of the slide. Tulip is very special, and the reason Tulip is special is because after massive storms on the Isles of Scoma, where they monitor their mums and pups very carefully, they'd never seen Tulip before, and after this storm she must have had a pup on a neighbouring island, maybe Ramsey Island, because she suddenly appeared on Scoma for the very first time, had milk, so she took over one of the orphaned pups that had been separated from its mother in the storm. So loads of pups had been washed out in a storm, and she found one and she took it over and adopted it, which is a lovely story, isn't it? And she spends quite a lot of time in Cornwall, so that's quite special. You said, has it been busy? Yes, it's been busy. This is what we did in 2020, which feels like a very long time ago now. But basically, we've got lots of people on the left-hand side doing lots of surveys. On average, 12 surveys every single day of the year, which is crazy, isn't it? and we processed almost 140,000 photos in 2020 alone. Despite COVID, people were able to walk to some of their local sites because we've got these local community hubs, which is great. And we got 12,000 IDs from that data. Lots of entangled seals, sadly. Some survived a rehab and rescue, which is great. Disturbance was down a little bit in 2020, not surprisingly because of COVID. It was down in Feb to July, but then August was the highest disturbance rate on record. So August wasn't good. But on an ID front, we had 7 seals that I first met in the year 2000 who are still alive in 2020. In fact, some of them are still alive in 2021, which is great. And why do we make that massive effort? Well, we make the massive effort to give seals a voice. So on the left-hand side is some of the important statutory stuff that we did. And the lady on the left is Vicky Bendel, who was the DEFRA Seals Policy Advisor down at our HQ in Cornwall. On the right-hand side, we do practical conservation stuff for seals, putting signs up where voluntary beach closures are needed and that kind of stuff, removing gear. And down the middle, 3 really high-profile programmes. Simon Reeve in Cornwall, if you haven't seen it, wow, I'd never met him before. I'd never seen him on the telly before I met him, and he blew me away. Talk about a presenter who's got a real genuine interest in trying to get to the bottom of issues. Yeah, I was really impressed with him. And the programme, we were proud of the programme. It included the food bank in Camborne, and he did a wonderful bit on the food bank, not just about the food bank being needed, but the fact that the community was solving the problem that they had. And I love his approach to TV programmes. I was really impressed with him. Autumn Watch with Gillian, and then Country File. And of course, we've just been on Country File again. So it's all about broadening the audience, growing that audience to marine conservation so that people will think about what they're chucking down their drain and their toilet, that kind of stuff. We need everyone to be thinking like that, really. We have common and grey seals in the southwest. Just in case you didn't know, we don't generally use photos of seals looking at the camera like this, because that means they're usually aware of the camera and therefore have already been disturbed. So we tend not to use photos of seals looking at the camera to role model best practice. However, for this purpose of an ID shot, it's quite useful. So I've used it. Common seals have dotty patterns or rings of patterns, whereas grey seals will have big blotches of patterns. So this is a female grey seal, and I've no idea what the common seal is. I can't sex common seals. But if you notice about the nose length as well, common seals have really short noses and grey seals have longer, stronger snouts. Common seals have foreheads and grey seals have flat nose profiles. So the reason I'm bothering to tell you is because you do have common seals on your patch. There was certainly one at Frampton for quite a long time, and we've got some exciting news about them. So I'll tell you that in a sec. This is a common seal we have regularly in Cornwall. He's called Ellis. He was called Elisa to start with, and we had to change his name to Ellis when we realised he was a he. He's massive. This is him on a mooring buoy, and we've known him for a long time, since 2009. Put his calendar there for you. So years across the top, months down the side, and the colours are for the different sites. He likes to visit this mooring buoy in the summer, and common seals seem to be the only seal capable of going on a mooring buoy, because they're the ones that are good enough to get balanced and agile enough to get balanced on the buoy without falling off. But you'll notice he's got a very nasty back scar, and it would be super easy for us to say this is a prop cut. In fact, that's what we thought it was to start with. And then when we tracked back with the photo ID photos, we realized much more likely to be a bacterial or fungal infection that's spreading. So it was a bit sad, really. And that scarring is getting worse, not better, but he's surviving with it. So however, this is really exciting news. You may have seen in the Mammal Society journal that common seals successfully pupped in the southwest for the first time since our records and Stephen Westcott's records began. And this female adult common seal had a pup. This one was in South Devon, photo by Mike Langham. But we've also had our very first successful common seal pup in Cornwall this year. So it looks like common seals are starting to recolonize the south coast, which is really very exciting, possibly to do with clean sweep, better, cleaner waters. We're not quite sure why they seem to be moving south, but that's really exciting news. British Divers Marine Life Rescue have been rescuing common seal pups for lots of years in Cornwall, so we know they've been having them somewhere. Had a long discussion with Dave Jenkins about where they might be coming from, and we've never been able to work out where. But we've had the first successful mums and pups, which is really great news. So yeah, this is Serena Lowen with her pup. Rupert Kirkwood, the lone kayaker. If you've never had him do a talk, get him to do your talk because he's great. He got this fabulous photo of mum and pup on the river. And great news is it still seems to be with its mum, which is a bit of a surprise and great news. However, most of the talk is about grey seals. I've got videos to show you, and I'm going to share in the chat at the end a playlist. So this is Lucille. Of course it's Lucille because she's from Lou. So she's Lucille, and this is her calendar, years across the top, months down the side, and you can see, you can predict she'll be in Lou between April and September. But this amazing seal was photographed in South Devon, so you know, not that far from Lou, but she's also been photographed in North Cornwall. So she commutes a lot. We think she probably goes north to have her pup. But we were delighted to link South Devon to North Cornwall. How exciting is that? So North Atlantic grey seals, I know that I've told you this before, but I always say it in every talk, are globally rare. There are actually more grey seals in there are more people in Cornwall than there are grey seals in the world. That's crazy. 34 to 38% of the world's population in the UK. That's down from 50 when I first started. So they're doing better somewhere else proportionally. And even though we've got over a third of the world's population, there are still more red squirrels in the UK than grey seals. So that's crazy. I'm going to put the playlist, but I will also put a link to Survey Monkey, because I'd really, really, really appreciate it if you were willing to do a survey for me afterwards, just to give a bit of feedback about the talk. So this is the first of the videos, tiny weeny seal in this massive sea. So we've got waves coming from two directions. Now I know this will play jerkily for you. So the playlist that I want to put in the chat at the end will enable you to watch all these videos in order on YouTube where they won't jerk. So it gives you an opportunity to revisit them and read about them. As you know, the Atlantic Ocean is very wild. It's a little kinder up at your end, but it can be very wild down at our end. And the thing that gobsmacks me is that these animals have no control over their environment, none whatsoever. And their environment is getting less predictable, which is very challenging for them. But they are driven by two drivers, food and genes. And I'm going to talk you through that process shortly. So to summarise our photo ID research about movement, because the only thing a seal can do if it doesn't like where it is, if there's something changed in its environment and it doesn't like it, it can't control it, the only thing it can do is move. So this is where seals in Cornwall we know have moved to. We've got two now linked to the southwest, one from North Devon, but linked to the Isle of Man. So North Devon's now linked to the Isle of Man, which is quite exciting. So is Cornwall. We've got seals linking North Devon to Northwest Wales, and also Cornwall linked to Northwest Wales. Then we've got links to South Wales, Ireland, Scilly, France, Belgium and Holland. So who knew that seals in the southwest were so well travelled? And they obviously haven't read the book either, because Mickey and Victor on the right, the most well travelled, are two common seals, and common seals are not supposed to move as far as grey seals. Nobody told Victor and Mickey, did they? So interestingly, seals are very like seabirds because they need marine and terrestrial habitat, and they need land to rest, digest, socialise with each other, work out their pecking orders, pup and replenish their oxygen supplies. But I put this video in, jerky as it is, to show you that it takes an awful lot of effort to get out of the water. That male has effectively just climbed up quite a steep slope. It takes energy a lot to come out to then rest. This video is a more recent video. Oh gosh, it's even playing jerkily on my computer. That's better. This is an adult female called Snowdrop, and she is traversing boulder terrain. Look at her climbing up this shelf over the boulders. She climbs over this terrain to feed her pup at low tide. So this is taking inordinate amounts of energy. And that's something that we need to remember when we see seals on land, that they've invested energy that they now need to repay by resting and then get into energy positivity by digesting their food. When I filmed with Ellie on Countryfile just recently, she said a sentence that I thought was magic, and that is, in the wild, every calorie counts and can make the difference between life and death. So messing with an animal's energy budget, be it a cetacean, a seal, or a seabird, or any other animal for that fact in the wild, you're messing with their calories, and that can have life-threatening consequences, surprisingly. This is a seal called Three Scars. He's just recently been seen at a site further up east from here. And this is to show you how slowly they will actually prefer to acclimatise to go in the water. So if we give them a choice, they will want to do this. I even had to speed the film up, look, because it would have taken the whole of the rest of the talk. But basically, he's now committed. He's going to put his bottom in and he's off swimming. So they have no blubber on their faces, their fore flippers, down their bottom and their rear flippers. So those bits are the sensitive bits for the cold water. And they'd rather use their counter-current heat exchange system in their flippers and their noses to acclimatise the inside of their body to the cold outside of their body. So ideally, they will, when they're ready to go back in the water, they will do so slowly. So of course, making them rush and disturbing them is not good. I'm sure I've shown you a video of a bottling seal, but this is probably a slightly different video. Bottling seal, sleeping in the water, having a yawn. I wanted to show you the nostrils opening and the whiskers, just how mobile those whiskers are. Because of course, I've said this to you before, I know that nostrils are shut when they're relaxed and they have to use their muscles to open them. And then they use their whiskers to find their food. And every whisker has 1,500 nerve endings. The palm of our hand has 2,500. So basically their faces are much more sensitive than our hands. And that's how they find their food. Okay, so on to food. This was a world first video. It's very dark because it's underwater. And there are 3 or 4 pregnant females feeding underwater, filmed by a diver off the Isles of Scilly, Dave McBride off the Isles of Scilly. She's heavily pregnant and she seems to be feeling her way in the water, and she's just caught a fish. Now this is a world first, and it's going to play in slow-mo again for you, her catching that fish in a minute. We knew that harbour seals snatched and then sucked their prey in, but we didn't know grey seals did it until this video. So when that slow-mo plays, you can see that the fish is caught by its rear fin, and all the seal does is suck for the fish to go down and be swallowed. What this video beautifully illustrates is that most of the stuff that seals eat is small. This is tiny herring, but it's mostly sand eels and dragonets. They eat more of those species than any other single species. They go down in one. But of course, the only ones we tend to see tend to be the big ones. And if they catch something big, they have to bring it to the surface to eat. This is another world first video. This was ironically also in the Isles of Scilly by a member of the public, Matt Hawkes. This is his family in the Scillies, and this is a seal zigzagging up a narrow gully. And whilst we can't be 100% sure, when you watch it on YouTube, there'll be a flash of silver here where you can see what this seal seems to be doing is herding a shoal of sand eels up to the end of the gully when it is then a feeding frenzy for the seal. So we didn't know that seals did this, that they would actively herd fish. Common sense tells you they're intelligent creatures, and of course they would. But this was the first proof that we got of active herding fish up gullies. Again, it's been seen with common seals. In fact, common seals have even been seen to herd fish onto the shore, where they then haul out and then eat the fish. So yeah, a bit more aggressive, I think, that one potentially. Okay, on to genes. So I think you know where this is heading. This is an adult female seal, beautiful, light and spotty. This one's called Crosscomb. She's gorgeous. I've known her since 2003. But the key indicator for a female, as Martin said at the start, smaller, more finer facial features and nose profile, but the fur pattern will tend to be a lot lighter and spottier, particularly on the belly. If it's got a dark belly, the chances are it's a male. So this is a male. I love this photo. Beautiful habitat, isn't it? Intertidal habitat. He's just chilling. He's a non-breeding male. So he's not mating with females, as most of the males in seal society are non-breeding. Most of them don't mate. They just chill, swim, feed, sleep. Chill, swim, sleep, feed. They don't do an awful lot of different, which is really fascinating. And we could learn a lot from seals. Anyway, this seal has a dark belly and a big, strong nose profile. So he is kind of pristine in his environment, plain and dark, and a male. This is a very special male. He's called Feathers, and I've seen him just recently. He's a beach master. Now, you will tell that the seal in the middle of the photo isn't the biggest male on the beach. Look, the one on the right is huge. But size is not everything. Gosh, we could so learn a lot from seals. Size isn't everything. And basically, this male has an X factor that we can't quite define. But imagining what it might be like to have to control a beach, well, you just have to be super intelligent. You have to be adaptable to the circumstances and cope with change. You have to be patient with your female, because all you're going to get from your female is grief telling you to get lost. That's all you're going to get. So you have to be patient and tolerant. And if you don't respect your female, there's no way she's going to let you mate with her. So she's going to go off and mate with a sneaky male. So you have to be respectful of your females. Say no more. Okay, so this is a wannabe beach master at the bottom of the video and a real beach master at the top. This wannabe is called Peapod, and I was really cross with him because DP2, the other seal, is one of my favourites. And Peapod's having a real go at this established beach master. But there's lots going on in this video that I want to play it again and talk you through. But before I do, I'm just going to say that DP2, who is the seal on the left, I've known since 2000, and he's the oldest seal that I've photo identified now, and he's just literally been seen this month. I didn't see him in 2019 or 2020, and he suddenly reappeared in 2021. He's now at least 28 years old and possibly an awful lot older. So he's clever and intelligent. You'll see this wannabe's drawn a bit of blood here, though, because he bit him below the mane on his neck. The mane on his neck is extra fat layers to protect him, and he's obviously been bitten a bit below that. So anyway, I'm going to play this video again. I'm going to try and play this video again. Here we go. Yes, there we go. So Peapod is on the power side of this relationship. He's on the beach side, and so he's in the power position. But DP2 is intelligent and clever and experienced. He knows that this big wave is going to push him into the power position up the beach. So he has now maneuvered into the power position, and Peapod is now in trouble. He has to back and face, back and face, back and face, because what he can't do is turn around and swim off. Because if he turns around and swim off, DP2 might rip the webbing on his rear flippers, and then he won't be able to swim. So he'll back and face, and head off into the water. And DP2 wins that battle, which frankly wasn't a particularly nasty, aggressive battle. And why do they fight? Well, they fight over these females. So this is a mating male. He's called Tamfire, and he's mating with kelp. And I took a photo. I didn't show you the gratuitous end of it, but I took the photo as evidence, and I took a video, short video, and then I left them because I thought, well, you know, their moment. They were surrounded by the seals, to be fair, so they were doing it in public anyway. But I went up to another site, and when I came back, I was a bit staggered, because when I came back, they were doing this. So they'd mated on the beach for over 20 minutes and then separated. Both of them had gone in the water. And now, an hour or so later, they were mating for the second time in the water. And they started mating out at sea. And I watched them being pushed back inshore. And they're now rammed up against, well, between a rock and a soft place, in between the kelp and the rock. And you can see from this video that it's 20 minutes of calm. Well, they just seem quite happy, and I wouldn't like to say the word enjoying, but they're calm and relaxed. She's quite happy there. He's loving it, presumably. And they'll stay like that for 20 odd minutes. There is a biological reason for this, of course, and the biological reason is if they stay entwined for 20 minutes, no other seal can come up and mess with his sperm before it gets a chance to get where it needs to fertilize the egg. But yeah, it's quite amazing. And then, of course, 8 months or so, 12 months or so afterwards, and 8 months of gestation, they will then have their pups. Now, I love this because this mum, whitefish, is coming up the beach and the tide's gone out since she last came to feed a pup, so she has no idea where a pup is. So she's now looking for a pup and she's not yet got a line of sight. So what she's doing is sniffing, and I think she's going to sneeze in a minute. Actually, I might have missed it. I'm just going to play it back again. She comes up the beach. At some point she sneezes because she is sniffing for her pup, and she turns her head to the right to sniff, left to sniff. Look, she's doing left. Up forwards, she's sniffing, and then she'll sniff to the right. I think she's about to sneeze. Oh, where's your sneeze, babe? Anyway, she's sniffing, there we go, in all directions for her pup. She sneezed to clear her nostrils so she can better sniff, and she's still not quite sure where it is, but she's now turning to the right. Oh yeah, she's had a bit of a look up the beach. No, she's definitely got the scent now, and she's moving to the right, and now she can see her pup and she's going over to feed it. So scent is a really, really, really important sense for seals, and the pup's aware and she's now going to feed it. This is actually a different mum feeding a different pup, but it's beautiful. They feed for just 3 short weeks. The pups go, as I'm sure you know because I've done you this talk as well, go from 10 to 40 kilos in 3 weeks, and have to be super fat in order to spend the time teaching themselves to feed, where they use those fat reserves up, and unfortunately if they go below 20 kilos they won't survive their first winter. So I put this in because I wanted to tell you about DP2 because he's featured a couple of times in this talk. So this is DP2's calendar at the top, stupidly complicated as you can see, but we've known him since 2000. I fibbed, I did see him in 2019, look, but I didn't see him in 2020. And then this is his female on the left here. This is Ghost with her pup. And this is my legendary rescue seal, Hufflebrush she's called. I rescued her from the water back in 2019 as a white coat. And now look at her. She's a full-on female and having her own white coat. So that's quite exciting. But this is Ghost's calendar. So Ghost is our world record breaking seal. She's now had, you're the first people that I'm telling in a talk, she's had 18 pups in 19 years. So she's had the first one in 2003. She didn't have a pup in 2018, but that's part of a very long story where loads of mums didn't have pups in 2018 because of storms in 2017. So she was one of many females who didn't pup in 2018. But you can see she's like a clockwork seal. Well, she was like a clockwork seal until 2021, bless her, because the photo of her here is down on the Lizard, and she usually pups all the way up on the north coast. She's had all her pups on exactly the same beach, bar the very first one, which was on an adjacent beach on the north coast, and now bar her last one, which was on the Lizard in South Cornwall. So what on earth is she doing there? Well, we just assumed maybe she was caught short because her pup was a little bit early and she didn't get to the north coast to have a pup, so she's having a pup on the south coast. But her chosen male between 2011 and 2015 was DP2, and he would come in, too old to beachmaster properly really. He would come in for her, protect her, look after her, mate with her, and then go. And she wouldn't mate with any other male, she would only mate with him. So it's a beautiful story. But of course this year he's turned up on the north coast looking for her, and where's she? Round on the south coast. Gosh, love can be so complicated when you're a seal, can't it? Oh no, it can be complicated no matter what. Okay, so this is Ghost with 2 pups here. The one on the left is hers, which she is protecting carefully, and the one on the right is not hers, but she's worried about it. She's very worried. I'm just going to start this video again. She's very worried, and the reason she's very worried is that big wave. So she knows that that seal pup that's bigger than hers is at risk of being washed out. I'm just going to start it again. So she's chaperoning her pup up the beach, and this big wave hits, and she knows that other pup's there. So when she knows her pup's safe, she's going to go and scare the other pup into moving up the beach. She's saying, get out of the water, go up the beach. And it goes up behind the boulder here. And the volunteer who took this video, Simon Bone, said the other pup wasn't washed into the sea and it got up the back behind the boulder and was fine. But now Ghost is chaperoning, look, Flipper over the top of her pup to keep it safe. She is chaperoning her pup up out of the waves. So, you know, there's an awful lot of behaviour and empathy and understanding and appreciation going on here that we really can't begin to get a head round. And this, I'm just going to hark back to the idea of this ecozoic, because the other concept of the ecozoic, if you look it up, is that an umwelt. An umwelt means that we can never be a seal. Of course, we can never fully appreciate what it is to be a seal. We can never fully appreciate their skills and abilities. But when you see behaviour like that, you begin to appreciate there's something going on that we aren't aware of, and they have skills and capabilities we can never appreciate. But it doesn't mean that anthropomorphizing is bad, because they're high-level mammals. You wouldn't say that dogs and cats and horses didn't have personalities, and seals are the same. Okay, and I put this in just because it's the fattest seal pup I have ever seen. It's almost as fat as its mother, and this is how fat and healthy seal pups need to be to stand any chance of surviving their first winter. It's lost its long white coat, so within 3 weeks it's molted and it's put on that 30 kilos plus. I mean, that looks more like 50 kilos to me, that pup. But as you know, their environment is all changing. A whole list of changes that I'm going to go through, with some pretty hideous impacts that our activities are having on seals. Go through all the climate change ones, which some people think might not be anthropogenic, but either way, climate is changing. You tend to think that sea level changes will affect seals the most, but I'm going to tell you that I think storms and cliff collapse are affecting them more at the moment as the first obvious indications of climate change. And then there's all the human activity stuff, which I can take you through. So things are changing, phenology shifts. So our peak season back in 2013, 2014 was August. So I'm sorry, our peak season was April back in 2013, 14, and it's moved earlier and earlier. And in 2020, the peak season was December the 25th was our biggest haul out. You know, is that just part of a cyclical change, or is that an ongoing change earlier in the year? But slightly more worrying in lots of respects is down the right hand side. Pupping has got earlier. So pupping used to peak in October, followed by November. And now pupping is September, followed by August. And whilst I don't want to preempt anything and a second wave of shed loads of pups, it feels like, touch wood, for this year, it's all done and dusted, but we'll wait and see. This is a very sad photo. It's part of a video, but I hate playing it, so I'm not going to play the video. And it's a pup with its mother, which is great. And it's a pup that's been washed out in a storm from an adjacent beach, who's lost its mother, and it's desperate. It's trying to suckle, so it's suckling a pup because that's all it can get. Desperately sad. And the other thing of change that we've had is we've had haul out changes, haul out extensions, beaches being used in the summer, which we didn't used to get. We've had haul out beaches moving from one side of a headland to another, and we've had this idea of recolonisation of sites where seals, since we've been recording, haven't used sites and are now starting to use them. But I just want to go back to talk about that pupping season again. Of course, August is peak tourist season in Cornwall. So having peak pupping and peak tourists in August and September is really asking for trouble. Okay, so I mentioned about climate change and cliff collapse. I'm sure I've shown you this photo before, but I'm going to show you again. This is 2 pupping caves on the middle of the photo. This is what 2 pupping caves after the start of the pupping season look like a week later. So there's been an absolutely ginormous cliff collapse here, and it has completely blocked those 2 pupping caves. One of my favourite seals, Boomers, the last time I saw her was outside that pupping cave, and I've not seen her since that rockfall. However, the bottom right photo shows you only need a tiny rockfall, tiny bit of cliff collapse, which is happening all the time, for a seal to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and obviously that will kill the seal. Plastic and marine debris, you know all about this stuff. Single-use plastic bottles is something that we're really hoping there'll be a kind of sea change, pardon the pun, in the coming year. And then macroplastics. So for seals, juveniles learn through play, like humans. Curiosity is key, and they'll use show and tell. So they'll watch other seals, trial and error. Oh, that tasted nice. No, that didn't. And process of elimination. Well, that was worth it. No, that wasn't. In order to learn about how to be a seal. Seals live in harbours. So this is Radley coming up to check the GoPro out and give it a kiss. And as she swims away, you might notice on her right thigh, there is a triangle of darker dots. So I'm just going to play that again. As she swims away, she's got a triangle of darker dots. Now, she spends the whole summer begging in Newquay Harbour for food, and sadly, people feed her. Can you see those triangular dots? We think that's a close encounter with a propeller. Harbours are very dangerous places for seals. We ask people to practice tough love and never feed them, but they explore things with those eyes and whiskers, as you saw. The worst thing in harbours, which is a little bit invisible in terms of its impact, is diesel. If seals inhale diesel, it leads to, in large quantities, it leads to organ failure and a slow death. So it's not great. Entanglement, you'll be familiar with me talking about this before. So this is Lucky Star, who we were able to rescue, but we weren't able to rescue him for 4 months. So the rescue was coordinated by British Divers Marine Life Rescue. I participated in it and cut the net off him. But by the time we were able to rescue him, the injury was considerably worse, and he had an absolutely hideous, deep, nasty wound. But the reason we couldn't rescue him on this day, you'll see he's just turned round and headed for the sea. He saw people on the cliff top. He was disturbed. He went back into the safety of the sea, and it took us 4 months to find him again and be able to rescue him. How do they get entangled? Well, that process of trial and error and curiosity. So the 2 still photos in here show a seal playing with a large amount of trawl nets, lost trawl nets, and their panic response is to spin. And when you spin in a big sheet of net like that, you end up cocooning yourself and risking being caught up forever. Fortunately, Mike Stevens, who took those photos, watched the seal being unspun and untangled. But you know, if you've ever tried to untangle a rope, you know the chances are of unspinning and untangling are actually quite low, but that seal was lucky. And then of course, flying rings. If you know dog owners, discourage them from using ringed frisbees because they can get lost on beaches and then seals play with them. Encourage them to just use solid frisbees, you know, because it's much less of a risk for all marine life. This is Radley again, just outside Newquay Harbour. I don't know if you can make out on a small screen, but there's a fishing line here that's got a hook in it somewhere at the end of that fishing line. So again, it's not great place. Seals get hooked up all the time, but this kayak is far too close. We're recommending, and WISE, the Wildlife Safe Scheme, recommends 100 meters from land, sea and air. Obviously, if you're on a cliff top and you're keeping a low profile, you don't necessarily need to be 100 meters away, but 100 meters is the general rule of thumb. Let's give seals space, because disturbance is the problem that we can easily solve today. If we point the finger at ourselves and say, am I doing the right thing? Am I 100 meters away? The problem will go away. The issue that's about disturbance is that it tends to be invisible, and I can't get any TV company to cover this in sufficient detail to say it. I said it to Countryfile and they cut it out. But basically, if we disturb a pregnant female like Radley is in the summer once, not a problem. If we disturb her repeatedly, as happens with Radley in the summer, she can't put on enough weight to properly feed her pup in the autumn, and then her pup dies in the winter. So this is an invisible impact 3 months down the line of her pup dying because of summer disturbance. So yeah, it's really big issue, particularly on our patch. I'm sure it is for the few seals that you've got on your patch for sure. I know Dave Jenkins sends us data about disturbance, so I know it's an issue for him. Disturbance comes from land, sea and air. We've got drones now that go out to take videos of seals on islands. Always need to be 100 meters away, and we discourage people from in trying to encounter a seal in the wild deliberately. You know, if you come across them by accident, that's a whole different ball game, but deliberately going to a haul out to do this sort of thing really is not responsible behavior. Seals have chosen a very few small number of sites around the whole of the southwest coast as their chosen sites. We need to let them have those sites, and we need to play in all the other sites and leave these special places, sensitive seal sites, to seals. If we don't, this is what happens. They will tombstone. Now, this is quite a benign tombstone. He's kind of letting himself into the water, really. This is my kind of tombstone. You know, if I was going to jump in the water and tombstone, it would be from a rock that height. However, of course, they come out at high tide and the tide goes out. This is a life-threatening tombstone. So this is a juvenile seal with very few blubber layers so far. And this is a classic way to snap a couple of ribs and break your bottom jaw. That's a life-threatening injury. So the seal will look stunned when it gets in the water, but it will probably die several months later. So these impacts are invisible and life-threatening, which is obviously no good at all. I didn't get this video very well because I took it too late, but this is a drone. So that was all caused by a drone. I'll play it again. All caused by a drone. The seals are wondering, what the heck? And only Flower Spike and this seal are brave enough to stay because the drone has now backed off, but it's too late for all the other seals. And then the other thing seals do is stampede. And this is a really high level risk stampede. Seals are likely to injure themselves. This one's already got blood on it. This one's entangled, and here's the frisbeed seal down here on the bottom left. It must be hugely painful for those entangled seals racing over terrain like this. And seals injure themselves. If you try and run over terrain like this, you probably twist an ankle at the very, very least. And it's not good for seals either. And because I know what to look for now, I try to photograph blood trails after a stampede. And this is a series of blood trails from at least 3 different seals heading into the sea. And on this particular day, there were 17 blood trails. So 17 seals injured themselves in a stampede, which is not good. So disturbance is always a waste of energy. It often results in injury and sometimes it's fatal. And as Ellie said, in the wild, every calorie counts and can make the difference between life and death. But there is some good news. And the good news is that we've got some robust evidence on this. Now, so all we need to do is watch seals well. We did some research back in 2019, which I'm sure I've told you about before. We looked at what seals were doing and what people were doing. Okay. And this is what happened at a sensitive seal site in 2 hours. Cut the long story short, shed loads of activity, 30 different activities in 2 hours. So we wrote the report on the left and we wrote the report on the right, which is a national report. Well, we found out that seals at best were disturbed every 27 minutes in the summer and at worst were disturbed every 14 minutes, which I think you could safely say is chronic disturbance. But the really interesting thing from the reports was that the cause of the disturbance at every site was slightly different. So if we want to effectively mitigate this, we need to have different approaches at every site. We can use some generic stuff, but really we need to focus on different things. So at Newquay, it was air-based. Mounts Bay, it was non-motorised boats and tripper boats. St Ives, it was ribs and tripper boats. And St Ives 2, it was tripper boats. So I think we started at this one, St Ives 2, because I think tackling 80% of disturbance with tripper boats is the simplest one for us to tackle. So we applied to DEFRA for the Green Recovery Challenge Fund to repeat those surveys. We wanted to do them in 2020, but obviously couldn't. So we've done them this year and they funded us to do it this year. We've also repeated all those surveys. I think there were 110 surveys we've done in June, July and August. Well done to Katie Bellman, our research ranger, for coordinating all that. But we've also set up a St Ives-based stakeholder group. This is all local people in the local community saying, do we care about St Ives Bay? If we care, what are the issues? Do we care about seals and disturbance? If we do, what are our options? And what are the options that will actually work here that we are prepared to sign up to? And it's been fascinating. They have come up with the most amazing solutions that I would never have dared suggest. And the community are asking operators and recreational activities to follow some guidelines. I'll be able to share that in the next talk, but I think this is the way forward, and you're in a great place to do that kind of work, community-based solutions to local issues for marine life. The other thing I do is I work with the Seal Alliance. So I chair the Seal Alliance Disturbance Working Group that's joined by all these groups. If you want to find out more about the Seal Alliance, they've got a website. And I've also sent up to you in North Devon some leaflets. I can send you more if you need them, especially now you're actually able to use leaflets. This is the outside of the National Seal Alliance leaflet, and this is the inside of it. The inside of the leaflet also doubles as a sign. And these signs I've sent out 99 nationally to north of John O'Groats and to south of Land's End, because they've even been translated into French. And this is one up in North Tyneside in the main photo with seals in the background. This is in Gower in southwest Wales, and this is leaflets being distributed to higher places or activity centres, so that people read best practice in a fairly manageable way before they go out with their SUP or their kayak or whatever. And we've also adopted this policy that I mentioned with that common and grey seal photo of, okay, our photos are not the best quality, but we're not going to use photos of seals looking at the camera anymore. We're going to use photos of seals doing natural behaviour because A, they're more interesting anyway, and B, we need to role model good practice. If a seal's looking at you, unless you've got a massive zoom lens like we have on a lot of our cameras, or Dave Jenkins has got on his camera, unless you've got a massive zoom lens, the chances are you really have disturbed that seal if it's looking at the camera. And should you have been doing that? And did you want to do that? So we're trying to role model best practice. We're asking people to only put photos of small numbers of seals online, because if they put a photo with a big wall out, all that we get is somebody says, where is it? And somebody else tells them, and then we add to the problem. We use generic location names. So my site is West Cornwall, even though that's a generic name. If people want to know and they ask me, I'll tell them, but I won't put it out online and drive traffic up there just for people who, you know, just want to go and have a gratuitous look and take a selfie with a seal. This is work in progress, because a lot of our leaflets that we've given to you before do have seals looking at the camera, but until they run out, we won't replace them with better photos. So this is what a great photo of a seal looks like. We're trying to change the culture of seal photography one photo at a time. Try and get award-winning photos of seals that are not looking at the camera because it's better for them. We've had meetings with some high-profile people in 2021. So this is George Eustace, the Environment Minister, and this is Under Secretary Rebecca Powell. Both of them have been to talk to us about disturbance, because this is their quick win. They can do something about this really easily. We can do something about it by pointing the finger and saying, am I doing the right thing? Am I 100 metres away? But we need a bit of legislative backup. It is illegal to disturb a whale or a dolphin, but it is generally not illegal to disturb a seal. Well, that's crazy and complicated for people who are using the coast. It'd be easier if it was just illegal to disturb seals, whales and dolphins. End of. So we've asked them to change the Conservation of Seals Act. We've asked them to make sure that seals are included in their wildlife legislative green paper review that should be out before the end of the year. And we've asked them to review the SSSI process. We have 3 SSSIs in Cornwall where it is illegal to disturb a seal. I'm just going to shut my door. Where it is illegal to disturb a seal, and we need more SSSIs to include seals. But in order to add a species to a SSSI, you have to redesignate the whole blooming site. So Natural England have realised that's crazy, and they're reviewing the review process for SSSIs. So those were our 3 asks. So we've had a parliamentary petition. They've got 26,000 signatures. It's all done and dusted now. It closed last month. We've had an early day motion with lots of MPs expressing support, though a lot of them don't sign EDMs. Long story. 10-minute rule bill coming up in the new year, and we're about to send an open letter to government asking for those 3 asks. So just to sum up then, nearly finished. Seal society is very complicated. Lots of things going on we'll never appreciate thanks to that concept of the ecozoic. No such thing as an average seal, as Marjorie said. Who knew seals in Cornwall were so well travelled? Your seals too, so that's visiting southwest. Well, actually all seals, presumably. They need joined up protected habitat for different seasons, and we need to let them have that habitat and just not use that habitat ourselves. And whether we like it or not, we're already impacting their health, welfare and mortality. And the reason I know this is because we have incredibly fantastic network of volunteers all the way around the southwest. from Wales all the way through to Hampshire in the south of England. And what do these volunteers do? Well, you know, because you do similar things on your patch, but they are eyes and ears for changes out on the water. They do surveys. They process the photos we collect for photo ID. They make and confirm the IDs. That data then has to get digitized. So we have volunteers who will digitize data at home and put it into Excel so that it can be multi-uploaded into the database. They analyze the data. So we've currently got 2 people in Sweden analyzing data for us, and a lady in Scotland did another report for us, and a lady from the Isle of Alderney did another report for us. So you don't have to be local at all. They're analyzing and reporting on our data for us. Fundraising, so we've just appointed a volunteer fundraising coordinator, SEAL supporter coordinator, Hayley Mitchell. She lives in London. She's going to support all our fundraising work. And the most important thing is that these amazing volunteers are ambassadors and champions for this absolutely incredible, globally rare seal. And because you're a very scientific organisation, I put this extra in. We finally just got published again. We've just had this paper in Marine Mammal Science, post-release monitoring of rehabilitated grey seal pups over large temporal and spatial scales. Apologise, it's American spelling because it's an American journal, but that is tribute to all our incredible volunteers, because without the data coming in, we can't put the data out in this format, which is the format that really counts for statutory agencies. An event coming up that I thought you might be interested in, and I'm counting you as SEAL group members whether you want to be or not, but this is a closed event, it's not a public event, so I'm not telling most people on talks about it. But the SEAL Alliance have a SharePoint session coming up on the 11th of the 11th, easy date to remember, 11th of the 11th at 5:30 to 7:30. It's on Eventbrite. There is a link, and I can share the link. I'll send it to you for sure. But this is where all these organisations around the UK are going to have 7 minutes to tell everyone what they do. And this is to make sure that we share expertise and stop reinventing wheels. So if you've got people who are interested, I can see Glenys looks like she might be interested, then you can sign up and attend that. If you want more talks, you know, we've got shed loads on our YouTube channel, and these 2 in particular are lovely. Mum doesn't, well, they're lovely in one respect because they're mum and pup, and they're not lovely because this is an example of a mum seeing people on the cliff top and being disturbed and not feeding a pup. So, and then this one is just a gratuitous pup, lovely pup, feeding a mum feeding a pup. Follow us on social media, please. One of our videos has actually had 750,000 hits, which is quite amazing, but it's quite exceptional, to be fair. And if you want to watch the Simon Reeve programme as well, that's on our YouTube channel too, so you can watch it. And then a bit of a plug, it's nearly, I'm still not talking about, I don't do Christmas, bless me, but yeah, if you do Christmas, we do have lots of things on the online shop that you can purchase. This is a new product. It's a lovely little fabric felted seal made by an artist in Truro. They're lovely. They've sold ridiculously well because they're child-friendly Christmas tree hangings. And the other thing is, Charlotte, who's also on this call, has hung hers from her mirror, her rear view mirror in the car. So it's a lovely little thing. And then the other Christmas tree hanging we've got is a handmade glass seal by a lady who lives 2 miles away. So we're trying to support local artists and local businesses through Christmas for sure. And we got Christmas cards too. And these beautiful pictures are made by Smarty Lids on the Beach. She donates the pictures to us, and they're made out of plastic picked off beaches. And these are pyroplastics, you know, those little burnt bit of plastics that wash up all over our beaches. So they're genuinely unique pictures. So please do have a look at our shop. We've got shed loads of stuff. And lastly, I need to put this link, please, for you to do some feedback about the talk. It's a SurveyMonkey link. It takes probably 2 minutes to do because it's multiple choice, but please do send your feedback in.